We're going to continue work on the player creation and player customization in this video. This set of changes, we're going to add some races so you can select whether your character is going to be a human, an orc, an elf, and we're also going to add in player attribute modifiers for the races. So you can do things like if you're an orc, your charisma is lower by 1, but your strength is increased by 1. We're also going to create some new windows at the startup to let the player eventually create their own character and re-roll the attributes if they're not happy, enter the name, select the race, things like that. And I'm going to try to run through the videos here a little bit faster. What I'm also doing, I'm playing around with recording the actual coding on Twitch TV. I'll put a link in the description box below the video, but the channel is twitch.tv/codingwithscott. And that's where you'll be able to see me actually type the code if you want to watch it an hour and a half of me typing. And if you don't want to watch it, I won't be offended. We'll start by opening up Visual Studio and going into the gamedetails.json file. First thing, I changed the name up here to title and added a subtitle node just so we have the ability to make our games look a little bit more custom and kind of create a series of games. But the main thing I added here was this whole new races list. Within the races, we have what will eventually be race objects. We have the key, the display name, the player attribute modifiers. So here we see human, their constitution, we're going to increase by 1. Elf, we're going to increase their charisma by 1 and decrease their strength by 1. And orc, we're going to decrease their charisma by 1 and increase their strength by 1. This way, when we roll the dice for the player's strength, charisma, intelligence, things like that, if they change what race they select for their character, it will change these modifiers. And the basic idea behind the game is I'm going to try to make it so that a lot of the flexibility is done here in the gamedetails.json, and it lets you dynamically create your own type of game, so you don't have to go in and recode the classes and the services, things like that. At least that's going to be the idea. We'll see how far that goes. Now that we have the gamedetails.json updated, we need to create a race class in the engine models directory. And this is a real simple one. It's just a key, a display name, and then a list of the player attribute modifiers, which is what we see here in the data. Key, display name, and player attribute modifiers. Next, in the engine models, we're going to create the player attribute modifiers class to convert the JSON into some objects we can work with. And all this is the attribute key, what attribute is going to be modified, and then the modifier. Since we're doing more work with JSON, I went into the engine shared extension methods class, and I created some new extension methods for us to work with the JSON. From lines 26 through 39, we have some functions to get the string value from a JSON object or the integer value from a JSON object. That's going to make it a little bit easier when we want to read the key or the modifier values. Now that we have this information in the gamedetails.json file, we need to have places to store that in the gamedetails class. So I've changed the name property to title, added a new subtitle property to hold the new subtitle value from the JSON file, and I added a list of races, which is where we're going to hold the race information. In the last video, I mentioned that we had some code to read the gamedetails.json file in game session, and I was probably going to pull that out later, and that's one of the things I did. In engine services, I created a new gamedetails class, and this just has a function to read the game details and return a gamedetails object. And all this code here is basically what we had before in the game session, plus a little bit more to read the races and the player attribute modifiers values. And if you notice the for each loops here, where we're going through the races and the player attribute modifiers, I've surrounded those with null checks. So this way, if there aren't any races in gamedetails.json, if a developer wants to create a game that just doesn't have any races in it or any player attribute modifiers for the races. They just don't include that data in the game-details.json. This won't error out because we say if it's not null, so if we have it, load it. If we don't have it, ignore it. This should give us some more flexibility for people who want to design their own games. And these use the new extension methods. So for the J tokens, we call token.stringValueOfKey or int value of key for the modifier. I think this shortens it up a little bit and makes the code a little bit cleaner and a little bit easier to read. Now that we have this new game details service, we don't need the same code in the game session class. So in engine view models game session, go down to line 210, the function where we were populating the game details and had all the JSON parsing, and just say game details equals game detail service dot read game details, and this will handle reading the JSON file for us. Since we changed the game details name for the game name to title, we need to go into the WPF UI project, into the main window.xaml, and on line 10, where we're binding the title value, we need to change it from game details.name to game details.title. So this way it will now display the title from the JSON file. Then we're going to create two new windows in the WPF UI project. One is going to be called Character Creation and one is called Startup. So this way when you start the game, the Startup window will display first, and it will eventually ask you if you want to load an existing game or create a new character. If you select to load an existing game, then it will get the information from the save file and go into the main window, so you start playing the game. If you select create a new character, it will go through the character creation screen, let you create a new character, and then go into main window. Right now we just have some buttons on it to just step through it. One of the next things we'll do is actually create screens to let you create a character. So if we look at the character creation screen, we see it's a very simple one that just says character creation screen and has a button for random player, which will take you into the main window and create a random player. And in our startup.xaml, we have pretty much the same thing, just a very empty XAML window with two buttons. One is called Start New Game, and then there's one for Exit. So if you click the exit, that just shuts down the program. If you click Start New Game, we'll go and look at the function. So all it's going to do is create a character creation window, show that, and then close this one down. If we go into the character creation, our button there, we have random player on click, the only thing you can do right now. And that has main window. It instantiates a new main window, our main game window, shows that, and then closes this character creation window. And originally, when we ran the WPF UI project, since that was our startup project, the main window opened first. That's because inside WPF UI, there's an app.xaml file, and on line 6, there's a startup UI, startup.xaml. This used to say main window.xaml. That's how the program knew which window to open up first. Now we're saying go to the startup one. So this is how we now go through our startup and then our character creation and then our main window. And I'll show you how this works. When we start it, we get our startup screen, which if we look at our XAML is our start new game and exit. Then we go to the character creation screen. And if I click random player, then we go back to the main window and we're back in the game. Not a whole lot of new things here. It's basically laying some groundwork for the character creation screen, which is going to be the next thing we'll work on. But I kind of like the flow and how a lot of this, I think we're going to be able to fit into the JSON file and make it very configurable so you don't have to keep modifying the executable, which is difficult and it can lead to a lot of problems at times. As always, if you're watching this on YouTube, in the description I'll have links to all the different sites so you can get the source code, ask questions, and I'll even put a link to my Twitch channel. I'll see what my schedule is. I'm probably going to try to do it like Saturday afternoons or Sunday afternoons maybe, but it's just something I'm going to experiment with and see how it goes. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.